So, you want to own a Burger King franchise. Sign the paperwork, lease a corner lot, fire up the broiler, watch the drive-thru fill up at lunchtime. Sounds like the safest fast food business on earth. The brand is global, the menu is famous. The Whopper has been around since 1957. The customers already know what they want before they pull in. But here's the strange part. Burger King is the second largest burger chain in the world, and hundreds of its franchisees have filed for bankruptcy in the last 5 years alone. By the end of this video, you'll know how a Burger King franchise actually makes money, why being number 2 in burgers is harder than being number 1, why the corporation profits even when the franchisee fails, and why people keep signing up anyway. If you want to follow the numbers all the way through, hit subscribe before you forget. It costs nothing, and it keeps videos like this one coming. Burger King franchises come in 3 sizes, and they're 3 completely different businesses. A small inline store in a strip mall, or a non-traditional location inside a Walmart or a travel plaza, costs around $300,000 to $700,000 to open. For that money, you get a 600 to 1,200 square foot space, a flame broiler, a fryer station, 4 to 8 employees on shift, and a customer base of office workers and shoppers who walk in because it's convenient. Most of these stores are owned by first-time franchisees or small operators who treat them as a single-unit business. Profit is thin, margins are tight. The owner often works the counter to keep labor costs down. A standalone freestanding restaurant is a different animal. Think the classic Burger King building you've driven past 1,000 times. A pitched roof, a drive-through lane wrapping around the back, a parking lot, a clearly visible road sign. The build-out cost runs $1,200,000 to $2,500,000, including land acquisition, construction, equipment, signage, and opening inventory. A real kitchen, a drive-thru with a digital menu board, seating for 60 to 100 customers, and a fleet of broiler equipment that defines the brand's signature taste. And then there's the multi-unit operator, the franchisees who own 20, 50, or in some cases, hundreds of stores. Carroll's Restaurant Group, until recently the largest Burger King franchisee in the world, operated over 1,000 locations across the United States before being acquired by Restaurant Brands International, the parent company of Burger King itself, in 2024 for around $1 billion. These are not burger restaurants anymore. They are regional logistics operations that happen to sell Whoppers. But the build-out cost is just the start. 2 more costs nobody warns you about. The first is the franchise fee structure. When you sign a Burger King agreement, you pay an initial franchise fee of $50,000. That's the entry ticket. After that, you pay 4.5% of gross sales every month as a royalty to the corporation. Then you pay another 4% of gross sales every month into the National Advertising Fund. That's 8.5% off the top, before you've paid for a single beef patty. McDonald's charges around 4% royalty plus 4% advertising. The royalty rates look similar on paper. The difference is that the average McDonald's location generates over $3,800,000 in annual sales, while the average Burger King generates around $1,400,000 in the United States. Same percentage. Less than half the revenue base. The math gets ugly fast. The second cost is the remodel mandate. Burger King has launched multiple major remodel programs over the last decade, each requiring franchisees to invest $500,000 to $750,000 per location to update the building to the latest brand standard. The corporation argues that modern stores generate higher sales. The franchisees argue that the additional sales rarely cover the additional debt. In 2018, the parent company launched a remodel program called the Sizzle Design. Thousands of franchisees pushed back. Many took out loans they could not service when sales did not climb as promised. By 2023, hundreds of those stores had closed. Then there's the lease and the land. A freestanding Burger King requires a high-visibility corner lot with drive-thru access, which in suburban America runs $8,000 to $20,000 a month in rent, often with annual escalators of 2 to 4% baked into the contract. The lease is signed by the franchisee, not the corporation, which means if the store fails, the corporation loses a royalty stream. The franchisee loses their investment, their personal guarantee on the lease, and often their home if it was pledged as collateral. Even the smallest franchise candidate understands what the corporation has built. Burger King is a brand that prints royalty income, controls supply, and decides which menu items get promoted nationally. Restaurant Brands International, the publicly traded parent company that also owns Tim Hortons and Popeyes, generated over $7 billion in revenue in 2023, with operating margins above 30% at the corporate level. That's because the corporation does not really run restaurants. The corporation collects royalties from franchisees who run restaurants. The risk lives at the store level. The profit lives at the parent company level. So you've got the store, you've got the franchise agreement, you've got the broiler, the fryer, the staff, the drive-thru. The customers are pulling in. Now we get to the question that actually matters. Where does the money come from? The obvious answer is the Whopper, the flame-grilled patty at the heart of the menu, the combo meal at the drive-thru, the kids' meal at the counter, the breakfast croissant on the morning shift. And all of that is true. But the obvious answer is also the wrong answer. The burgers are not the business. The burgers are the cover charge. The actual business is sitting in Miami, Florida, in a corporate office, calculating 8.5% of every transaction that happens in your store, whether you make a profit or not. Every Burger King franchise on earth earns money in 3 completely different categories, and the split is brutal in a way nobody explains to you before you sign. The industry calls them food cost, labor cost, and occupancy cost. Food cost is everything that goes into the meal: the beef patties, the buns, the cheese, the produce, the fryer oil, the packaging. Labor cost is wages, payroll taxes, workers' compensation insurance, manager salaries. Occupancy cost is rent, utilities, equipment maintenance, point-of-sale fees, property taxes. At a typical Burger King, food cost runs around 30 to 33% of sales. Labor runs 28 to 32%. Occupancy runs 10 to 14%. Royalties and advertising fund payments take another 8.5%. The franchisee's slice of every dollar that walks through the drive-thru is, on a good day, around 8 to 10 cents. On a bad day, 0 or negative. Easiest way to picture it. Imagine a customer pulls up to the drive-thru and orders a Whopper meal for $10.49. Of that, around $3.30 goes to food. Around $3.10 goes to labor. Around $1.20 goes to rent, utilities, and equipment. 89 cents goes straight to the corporation as royalty and advertising fund. What's left for the franchisee before income tax is somewhere between 80 cents and $1.20 on a single combo meal after paying everyone else first. Now multiply that by the average store. The numbers stop being theoretical. The average Burger King franchise in the United States generates around $1,400,000 in annual sales. McDonald's, by comparison, averages over $3,800,000 per location. Wendy's averages around $2 million. Chick-fil-A averages over $9 million. Burger King has the lowest average unit volume of any major burger chain in America by a wide margin. On $1,400,000 in sales, the franchisee takes home roughly $50,000 to $100,000 a year in actual personal income, often while working 60 to 70 hours a week at the store to keep labor costs under control. The average Burger King franchisee earns less than the salaried manager of a single high-volume McDonald's, who works fewer hours and carries none of the personal financial risk. Then there's the corporation side of the same transaction. Restaurant Brands International, the parent company of Burger King, collects 4.5% royalty plus 4% advertising fund from every store, every month, regardless of whether the store made a profit. On $1,400,000 in sales, that's roughly $119,000 per store, per year, flowing to corporate. With over 7,000 stores in the United States alone, the math is staggering. The corporation does not need any individual store to be profitable. The corporation needs the store to be open. And here's the part that breaks people's brains. The longer you run the franchise, the more the math compresses. The industry calls it franchisee margin erosion. Wages keep rising, rent keeps escalating, beef costs keep climbing. But the corporation sets the menu prices nationally through promotional campaigns the franchisee must honor. When Burger King ran its 2 Whoppers for $6 promotion, when it pushed the $10 bundle deal, when it launched the Royal Perks loyalty program with deep discounts, franchisees absorbed most of the margin compression. The corporation kept its 4.5% royalty. The franchisee kept the lease and the debt. So, now look at the architecture of the agreement. Read any Burger King franchise disclosure document. Notice anything? The franchisee is responsible for the lease, the build-out, the equipment, the staff, the payroll taxes, the local marketing supplement, the remodel costs, and the personal guarantee. The corporation owns the brand, the menu, the supply chain approval list, the technology platform, and the right to terminate the agreement for a long list of contractual reasons. The industry has a term for this kind of structure: asymmetric risk. The franchisee carries almost all of it. The corporation carries almost none. The psychology of the franchisee is even sharper than the architecture. A first-time franchise buyer is a captive customer in a different sense than a fast food diner. They have signed a 20-year agreement. They have personally guaranteed a multi-million-dollar lease. They have invested their savings, their retirement accounts, and often a small business administration loan into a single storefront. They cannot walk away without losing everything, which means when the corporation requires a remodel, the franchisee pays. When the corporation launches a value menu that compresses margins, the franchisee absorbs the hit. When the corporation approves a new Burger King location 3 miles down the road, the franchisee swallows the encroachment. The data shows it. Burger King closed over 400 underperforming stores in the United States between 2022 and 2024 alone. The franchisees who closed lost their entire investment. The corporation kept collecting royalties from the stores that survived. And at the very top of this pyramid sits the parent company itself. Restaurant Brands International, headquartered in Toronto, with major operations in Miami, was formed in 2014 when 3G Capital, the Brazilian private equity firm, merged Burger King with Tim Hortons. The company is now valued at over $30 billion on the New York Stock Exchange. That valuation was not built on flame-broiled patties. It was built on the royalty stream from over 30,000 stores globally across Burger King, Tim Hortons, Popeyes, and Firehouse Subs, who pay 8 to 9% of gross sales every month, regardless of whether their individual stores make a profit. The franchisees are not the customers. The franchisees are the product. So here's the whole revenue model in one sentence. Royalty rate multiplied by store count, multiplied by store survival, multiplied by remodel cycle. And every single decision at corporate, from menu pricing to store location approval to technology mandates, exists to maximize one of those 4 numbers. The burger is bait, the brand is the trap, the franchisee is the product, and the food, the thing most people think the business is built on, is just the cover story that keeps the royalty stream flowing. So, with all this guaranteed brand recognition, all this captive franchisee loyalty, all this engineered royalty income, why do Burger King franchisees ever sign up at all? The short answer is the dream. Out of every dollar of Burger King franchise revenue, an enormous portion is gone before the owner sees anything. A typical franchisee runs on a net margin so thin it often disappears entirely. Hundreds of Burger King operators have filed for bankruptcy in the last 5 years, and the largest Burger King franchisee in America, Carroll's Restaurant Group, was so financially stressed that the parent company itself had to buy it out in 2024 to stabilize the system. Where does it all go? About 30 to 33% of revenue at a typical store goes straight to food costs purchased through the approved supply chain managed by RSI, the Restaurant Services Purchasing Cooperative. Another 28 to 32% goes to labor, which has only climbed as minimum wages rise across most American states. Add 8.5% in royalty and advertising fund payments, paid monthly off gross sales regardless of profit. Add 10 to 14% in rent and utilities. Add credit card processing fees, point-of-sale technology fees, uniform costs, manager training fees, and the periodic remodel mandates that can cost the franchisee $500,000 to $750,000 out of pocket per location. Then there's the stuff most people never think about. Workers' compensation insurance runs $5,000 to $15,000 a year per store, more in states like California. General liability insurance climbs every year. Health inspections, fire inspections, ADA compliance audits. A single slip-and-fall lawsuit at a Burger King has cost franchisees hundreds of thousands of dollars in settlement and legal fees. Equipment breaks. The flame broiler is the most expensive piece of kitchen hardware in the building, and replacement parts are not optional. Drive-thru systems fail. Then there's encroachment. Burger King has historically approved new stores within a few miles of existing locations, splitting the same customer base across multiple sites and cutting both stores' sales overnight. The guaranteed top line is real. Everything below it is a fistfight. That fistfight is where most Burger King franchisees lose, and it has a small set of repeat patterns. Burger King franchises can fail for a lot of reasons, but two mistakes show up over and over again. Mistake 1. Buying too many stores too fast on borrowed money. Carroll's Restaurant Group built itself up to over 1,000 Burger King locations across the United States, financed largely through debt. When same-store sales softened, when wages climbed, when remodel costs piled up, the debt service became unsustainable. By 2023, Carroll's was carrying hundreds of millions of dollars in long-term debt against a business generating modest free cash flow. In 2024, Restaurant Brands International acquired the entire operation for around $1 billion to prevent a systemic collapse. Meridian Restaurants Unlimited, the second largest Burger King franchisee in America at the time, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2023, owing tens of millions of dollars and operating over 100 underperforming locations. Don't build a franchise empire on debt that assumes every store will be perfect. No store is perfect from day one. Mistake 2. Wrong location for the model. This one has killed hundreds of stores. Burger King expanded aggressively into secondary trade areas, small towns, and weak retail corridors throughout the 2000s and 2010s, on the theory that any location with car traffic could support a burger restaurant. It turned out that many of those locations could not. A Burger King on a struggling commercial strip might generate $900,000 in annual sales, which sounds fine until you do the math on food, labor, rent, royalties, and remodel obligations. The store breaks even on a good month and loses money on a bad one. Between 2022 and 2024, Burger King closed over 400 underperforming locations in the United States alone. Most of those closures were franchisees who could not make the math work in locations the corporation had originally approved. Step back for a second. The economics of this industry are paradoxical. A Burger King franchise has one of the most recognized brand names in food service. The supply chain is fully built. The menu is fully designed. The training is standardized. The marketing is national. And yet, Burger King franchisees earn less, on average, than the operators of almost any other major burger brand. Why? Because the math only works for the corporation, not for the franchisee, when the store-level revenue is too low to absorb the fixed costs. The royalty rate is rigid. The supply chain pricing is rigid. The menu prices are set nationally through promotional campaigns the franchisee must honor, which means everything outside the math has to be perfect for the franchisee to come out ahead. Your location, your labor management, your remodel timing, your debt structure. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you do this right? 2 scenarios, real numbers. Scenario 1. A single Burger King franchise in a suburban corner lot. $1,800,000 to open, including land lease and build-out financing. Annual sales around $1,400,000. After food, labor, rent, royalties, advertising fund, debt service, and every other cost, your real take-home is roughly $50,000 to $100,000 a year, assuming you also work the store as the operating manager to keep labor costs down. Payback. 12 to 20 years if you survive the remodel cycles. Not glamorous, not really a business in the traditional sense. The most disciplined small operation you will ever run for the income of a mid-level office job. Scenario 2. A multi-unit operator running 40 stores across a region. $60 million in total invested capital. built up over 15 to 20 years with significant debt financing. Combined annual sales around $56 million. And here's a fun fact most people miss. The economics only start working when you cross the threshold where you can hire district managers, centralize bookkeeping, negotiate group insurance, pressure landlords across a portfolio, and absorb remodel costs across a larger base. Net profit after everything, around $2 to $4 million a year, on a 40 to 50 hour work week for the owner. Payback, 12 to 18 years, assuming the system remains stable. Then you're earning a real income on an operation you built one store at a time. And if you survive long enough, you become something specific. The largest Burger King franchisees in the world built fortunes by treating the brand as a logistics and real estate exercise, not a hamburger business. The Carroll's family built a regional empire in upstate New York, starting in the 1970s before scaling nationally. Some operators diversified into other fast food brands, adding Popeyes or Taco Bell locations alongside their Burger King portfolio, reducing their dependence on any single franchisor. The ones who built generational wealth in Burger King did it by understanding that the franchise agreement was the asset, and the burger was almost beside the point. So, if you do decide to own a Burger King franchise, just remember the most important rule of this business. The brand is the bait, the royalty is the trap, the remodel is the hook. Make sure you're not buying a burger restaurant. You're buying a 20-year contract that happens to sell Whoppers.